The rain poured in sheets, cold and relentless, washing over the silent city like a cleansing flood. The streets were empty, save for the occasional flicker of headlights slicing through the darkness. At precisely 3:12 a.m., in the wealthiest part of the city where mansions rose behind wrought iron gates and trimmed hedges, a single old van rattled to a stop. From it stepped a man wearing oil-stained overalls, his face drawn and tired, hands calloused from a lifetime of labor. His name was Marco, a 29-year-old mechanic, barely scraping by, working odd night shifts to keep food on the table for his younger brother. He shouldn't have been there. It was a neighborhood where people like him were invisible, unless something broke. And tonight, something had. A faulty security light on the edge of a stone driveway, flickering like a dying star. He adjusted his worn cap, tools slung over one shoulder, and stepped into the cold drizzle, unaware that beyond the gate, someone was watching him. Someone whose life was about to be changed forever. Before we dive deeper into this emotional journey, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the unexpected power of human connection, please like, comment, share this story, and subscribe to Royal Stories. Your support helps us tell more heart-touching stories that matter. Marco worked in silence, barely noticing the grandeur around him, the ivy-clad mansion with its tall arched windows, the marble lion statues guarding the door. He wasn't impressed by money anymore, he had seen what it could do and what it couldn't fix. His father died fixing cars that didn't belong to him, and his mother had worked her fingers raw as a house cleaner in these very neighborhoods, dying with more debt than dignity. All Marco cared about now was surviving, and keeping his promise to his little brother, Leo, who slept on a broken mattress back home. Marco adjusted the wiring, braced against the wind, and finally brought the light back to life. As he began packing up, the mansion's front door creaked open. Standing in the golden glow of the hallway was a man who looked like a ghost, tall, silver-haired, dressed in a midnight blue robe, his eyes empty yet searching. He looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. Marco froze, uncertain whether to speak, but before he could, the man said in a low voice, almost a whisper, "Don't leave me." It wasn't a command, it was a plea. Marco didn't know what to do. He looked around, half expecting security to come running or some misunderstanding to erupt. But none came, just silence, rain, and that broken voice. "Don't leave me," the man said again, stepping forward, trembling as if those few words had drained all the strength from him. Marco instinctively reached out, catching him as the man staggered slightly. Up close, he could see the deep lines etched into his face, not just from age, but grief. That night, Marco stayed. Inside the mansion, everything was pristine and beautiful, but lifeless. The air was heavy, like a home waiting for someone to come back who never would. The man's name was Elliot Graham, a name Marco recognized vaguely from news headlines years ago. A tech entrepreneur, millionaire, philanthropist, once admired for building an empire from nothing. But tragedy had buried him in silence. The death of his only daughter in a car crash, followed by a divorce, then a withdrawal from everything and everyone. He hadn't spoken to another human being in person for weeks. The light Marco had fixed. It wasn't just broken wiring. It had been blinking for hours because he had intentionally tampered with it, hoping someone, anyone, would come. Marco didn't ask questions that night. He just listened. For hours, Elliot talked. About his daughter, her laugh, her violin recitals, about how the silence had become unbearable, about how being rich didn't mean anything if you had no one to share your life with. Marco sat in an armchair by the fireplace, wet socks drying on the tile, stunned by the rawness of it all. When the sun rose, Elliot fell asleep mid-sentence, curled on the couch like a child too exhausted to pretend anymore. Marco could have left then, should have, but something kept him there. Over the next few weeks, something strange happened. Elliot hired Marco, not as a mechanic, but as a companion of sorts. A friend. He paid him hourly, enough to keep Marco's shop running and send Leo to school. At first, Marco felt guilty taking the money. He wasn't doing anything special, just being there. They drank tea in the mornings, played chess in the afternoons, and sometimes, just sat in silence, looking out the window. Marco brought life back into the house without realizing it, cooking simple meals, fixing leaky faucets, playing old records Elliot had forgotten he owned. Slowly, the old man smiled again, laughed, remembered how to live, but not everyone was happy. Some of Elliot's distant relatives, eager for inheritance, were suspicious. A poor mechanic suddenly spending time in the mansion. They whispered about manipulation, con games. One even threatened Marco in the driveway, warning him to leave before things got ugly. But Marco didn't flinch. He wasn't there for money. He was there because for the first time in his life, someone had needed him, not for what he could fix, but for who he was. Then one morning, Marco arrived to find the front gate locked. A lawyer stood waiting, papers in hand. Elliot had been taken to a private clinic by his nephew, citing mental instability. Marco wasn't allowed in. Days passed, then weeks. No calls, no updates, just silence. Marco's world shrank again, back to greasy tools, unpaid bills, and a brother asking why the old man didn't visit anymore. But fate wasn't done writing their story. One cold evening, a black car pulled up outside Marco's shop. The driver handed him a sealed envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter. "You didn't leave me when I was broken. Now I won't leave you in your struggle. I'm sorry they kept me away. But I've fixed it. Check the back." Trembling, Marco flipped the letter. There, scrawled in wobbly pen, were words that changed his life. "I've left you the house. And enough to build a future, for Leo. For your shop, for yourself. Because you gave me back my soul, Marco. And I'll never forget that." Tears blurred his vision. He didn't care about the house or the money. It was the recognition, the bond, the love that broke him. He had grown up invisible, unnoticed, and yet, someone like Elliot had seen him. Truly seen him. A year later, the mansion was no longer a mausoleum. It was a home. Leo played guitar in the garden. Kids from the local shelter came every weekend for meals and mentorship. Marco ran a free repair workshop in the garage. Elliot's portrait hung by the staircase, surrounded by warmth, color, life. Marco never forgot the night a broken light led him into the life he never dared dream of. Because sometimes, the most powerful moments begin not with grand gestures, but with a whisper in the night, "Don't leave me." If this story touched your heart even a little, please like this video, leave a thoughtful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to Royal Stories for more inspiring true life tales. Your support means everything. Down finger special request. If you've ever felt invisible, or like your kindness went unnoticed, tell us your story in the comments. Someone out there might need to hear it.